练好，不急哦，去追，OK， 好，马上，马上。
以上是2019年世锦赛上郭幸淳打破59公斤级挺举世界纪录的瞬间。大多数人看他的动作，最多的感触就是稳且管理很到位的表情。如果你也想学习他的技术，一定要看完这个视频。
There's 6 key points that I look at in the clean and jerk, and that first one is going to be from the floor to the knee. What is happening? Okay, so we want to look at Guo, and we want to see what is she doing right off the floor. Okay, so floor to the knee, right there is where she's at her knee point. Okay, notice how tight her back is. Chest is over the bar, but the biggest thing is what is she doing off the floor? Okay, so the chest comes forward a little bit, and the hips come up a little, right? But the main thing here is that she loads, those knees come back. Okay, so we see the knees pushing back off the floor. As she gets to right about the kneecap, that's when the chest starts to come up. So first, the hips come up and the chest comes up, but then right when the bar gets to the kneecap, that's when the chest starts to come back up a little bit quicker than the hips. So the big thing is the knees, what I would say that step one, floor to the knee, push your knees back off the floor. Okay, so knees back off the floor. That second key factor is what I refer to as no man's land. And this is where I think almost all lifts are lost, from right below the kneecap to right above what I refer to as the reciprocation point. The reciprocation point is when the knees start to come under the bar. So if the knees stay back too long, there tends to be a gap through no man's land, which again is below the knee to right above the knee. And if there's a large gap, it ends up causing some serious problems. The bar might be really far forward, the lifter might get on their toes early, and a whole bunch of different things can factor into a missed lift here. So if we look at no man's land from at this point here for Guo, okay, right there, and then we look at what happens to right here, that's when her knees start to come under the bar. So right here, she's still flat-footed. Upright with that chest, okay? Arms almost entirely locked out. Maybe a very, very slight arm bend, and that's perfectly fine, okay? So now, so from below the knee, so no man's land, below the knee to right above the knee, knees start to come through to keep that bar tight to the quad, okay? So now, I want to look at the third key point, and that's going to be the reciprocation point right here into her contact point. So reciprocation point to hip. So we're starting floor to knee, that's point 1. No man's land, point 2. Reciprocation point to hip, point 3. Okay, so from right here to where she makes contact, okay? As she makes contact right here, you can see that singlet starting to come up a little bit on that left side. She's starting to make contact. Now look at her heels. She is still flat. Okay, chest is still upright over the bar. Hips are coming through. Okay, so she's starting to extend those hips. But the big thing that I see is that those heels are still flat. So that's what we want to see, is that as the chest comes up and the hips come through and the knees come forward, we want to sit on that heel, okay, to bring that chest upright. That's what Guo's doing here with 140 kilos. Now the next position, so floor to knee, then we look at no man's land, then we look at reciprocation point to the hip. Now we're looking at hip to the catch. So we're going off of this hip, she extends right there, okay? Full extension, you can see knees locked out, plantar flexed, hips are through. Hips are through, knees are locked out, she's plantar flexed here. Now we want to see what she's doing with her upper body. Elbows start to come back. And you can really see it right here. Elbows are bending back. So she's got this elbows coming back, and what that does is it keeps it, and you can see how upright her chest is even on that finish. Keeps it very, very tight to the chest. This reminds me, this is how Haley finishes her cleans. Okay, so she gets that nice upright posture in the catch. And you can see here, the bar's slightly forward. Now this is 140 kilos. I believe it was a world record at that point. You can look at her knees. So she's got crazy dorsiflexion, which is the mobility that you need here in that catch. And then you can see as she bounces, right, she comes back a little bit more. So the knees are really, really far forward here, right, which tells us it's a hair forward. So maybe she could have been a little bit tighter around the knee, but it's 140 kilos, so it's okay. And then you can see she loses that a little bit as she sinks those hips back to catch that stretch shortening cycle out of the bottom position. The crazy part is that that upright trunk, her elbows barely drop at all. So you need a lot of that upright trunk work to be able to handle that catch. So we're looking at, again, hip to the catch. That's position 4. She's going to stand that up, Nice and upright. Now, position 5, we're going to look at the dip and the drive. Okay, dip and the drive of position is position 5. That's a nice rhyme that we just got there. Okay, so now we're going to change that video angle. And I love seeing this because you can sort of zoom in a little bit more. And you're going to see on this, I've watched this lift quite a bit, a little bit of an unbuckling in her abs at the bottom of the dip here. Right there, you can sort of see her hips. I'm going to show this again here. So we start up top. She's dipping very, very upright. Maybe a hair forward, maybe just a hair forward, but that posture is very similar to what she did out of the bottom. Okay, she's still on the heels. Okay, I want to see, and you can see that dorsiflexion is very similar to where she caught the clean. I want to look at when do those heels pop. Okay, so for Guo, those heels sort of come up right here, right after this position at the top as she extends the knees. That's where you're going to see those heels extend. So she has knee extension, hip extension, plantar flexion. Now that bar is going to come up. What I want to show you in this dip, we go back, and again, she is the absolute, I think, greatest of all time technique-wise. If we look, I'm going to zoom in here. If we look closely, right there, her hips come forward. Her hips sort of sink under, right from here to here. You can see a little belt change right there. Watch the belt just sinks a little bit forward. There's like a very, very, very slight collapse. And what I think that does, I'm not saying that this, we want to avoid that. So with clean technique, in the dip and the jerk technique, we want to stay as upright as we possibly can so that that doesn't happen. Because what I think ends up occurring is it's a little bit forward in the split. And the split in recovery is really position 6. Now, one thing I want to point out with Guo, you can see because of that little bit of a dip, that little collapse in her dip, there's a little bit more weight on her front foot here. She has great mobility in that back ankle. Her knee is down, head's through. It's a little bit forward, just a little bit, but her shoulders are also extraordinarily strong in the recovery. She's still able to recover with that front foot first, and then she does take that back step a little bit longer than her front step to get past the front foot. And I think that back foot, having a bigger back foot recovery there, is caused from that little bit of a collapse.